It's time for the chaos to cease.
Time to open yourself to peace.
From the hours you've put in.
To the next shift you begin.
From the endless pursuit of release.
That finds the worst unleashed.
Transform the ugly into a win.
Get to know your shield within.
Good morning.
Good morning, Marc.
And welcome to the Shield Within.
Yes, welcome indeed.
This is episode
13?
13. Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah, we did 11 and 12 with Donnie, didn't we?
Right.
Isn't that terrible when we just don't keep track of our numbers? I should have wrote that down earlier. I've been busy doing everything else.
Right.
Anyway, good morning. I'm Marc the Cobb. Welcome to the Shield Within. My esteemed colleague here to my right, Dr. David Buchanan.
Good morning.
And we're super excited today because we have a guest.
Mm-hmm.
We're not allowed to say she's esteemed, but she's our new friend.
Yes. A new friend of the Shield Within.
Yeah,
That's
a new
right.
friend of the Shield Within. I'm a huge fan so far, what I've said. We have Joe Terry with us. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming up and making the trek.
It's a beautiful drive, beautiful morning.
Yeah. So you are from?
I am from Kentucky, born and raised.
Awesome. What part? For us Ohioans.
Well, northern Kentucky. So Fort Wright is where I was raised, and I lived in Covington, Kentucky for the last 15 years.
Are you ready for this?
I am.
I was born and raised in Covington, Ohio.
Oh.
Covington buddies. Boom.
Yes. And who was Covington anyway? I need to research that.
Right, exactly. I saved that up. I didn't want to. We did a little, what do we say? A little show prep before we got in here, so I kind of held that back. So get the surprise factor a little more. That and 50 cents will get you a cup of coffee.
That's right. And somewhere not in Covington.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, Covington, Kentucky, I think is substantially bigger than Covington, Ohio.
That's my understanding.
We were only 2,300 people.
I couldn't even tell you what the population of Covington, Kentucky is.
Probably more than that. It's a
little.
river town, right?
It is a river town, and I lived 3 blocks from the river.
Oh, wow. That's exciting.
Mm-hmm. It was.
Nice.
Cool.
It was.
Let's do a little business and we'll jump into this. So, if you are a Facebooker, and we hope you are, even though I just came out of Facebook jail for making this statement, men are pigs.
Oh.
They said that was hate speech.
Okay.
I'm like, all right, well, see you in 24 hours. Anyway, go to Facebook / The Shield Within. If you're also internet savvy, you can go see us at www.theshieldwithin.com. If you're having a bad day, you want to talk to someone, and you want to talk to the golden throat himself, the silver-toned devil that's sitting to my right, you can go to www.lessonslearnedcoaching.com, or you can go to the Shield Within, hit the coaching button, take you right to Dr. David. Now, we have to say, he's not a real doctor.
That's
but
right.
I think it just has a good ring to it, don't you, Joe?
I love it.
Did Dr. David ring? It
Dr.
kind of
David.
rolls off your mouth instead of a licensed clinical therapist with everything else. So, but he can get you there. Great guy. He's a miracle worker. What else am I forgetting? Am I forgetting anything else? I don't think so.
Let us feedback.
Yes. Most importantly, listening to the Shield Within. If you are in public safety, some of the subject matter we talk about on here could stir up some things. You could get repressed memories based upon what we've done in the first 12 episodes. If you have a problem or if that's happening, obviously reach out, call.
Right.
Call your therapist. Hopefully you have one. But if not, let us know. We can get you there. Shoot us a message through Facebook or whichever else. Or reach out to Dr. David. He can get you wherever you're listening at in the world.
Right.
We have India and the Netherlands has been listening in, so that's exciting.
Real cool.
Yeah, very cool.
Love to hear that from that listener. What's touching?
We mean that.
Yeah.
We're hoping there's more than one.
What is going on in the Netherlands that connects you to this show? I would love to hear the answer to that question.
Yeah. Maybe they were just searching things called the Shield or whatever else, but who knows?
Or this is St. Michael thing. I don't know.
Fun fact, our photo that we have is the St. Michael, but years ago, I think it was right after, and I need to preface this, the day we're recording this, we've just had a line of duty death here in our adjacent county. I'm in Miami County, Ohio, and the adjacent county, Clark County, and unfortunately the officer that did not survive his incident, I knew. I'm a trainer at the state level and just had him in training. And it was death by firearms, so I'm a little jittery. It's real close, and this agency had that very similar incident 11 years ago. So after that first incident, I had my daughter alter that St. Michael photo and fill in the cross with the thin blue line. So
you
haven't seen that out there.
Right.
Yeah.
I read about that over the weekend. It got a lot of news coverage, and it's a very sad event, heartbreaking, but it's part of what y'all do. So
it is. And a lot of us, I had a very, very similar incident, January 18th, 2017.
Yes.
Thankfully, divine intervention kicked in.
Yeah.
So I'm a little reactive to that, but it's not about me today. It's all about Joe. Thank you for being here. Tell us about yourself.
How about if I lead,
let's do that. Sorry.
lead you in? I love your website. I have gone there many times, and I find it to be much clearer and easy to navigate and get something from than a whole lot of websites on the internet.
Well, that's good to hear. Very good to hear.
So I would very strongly urge all listeners, go to Joe's website, which is called the Chip Terry Fund website for first responders. And it's a really nice, simple set of information, easy to find stuff. I really enjoy going to that website. I want to tell you about that first.
Well, that's great to hear.
And I love what the fund is doing, and I thought maybe we could start by just having you tell people, what is the Chip Terry Fund doing for people?
So we were originally established for educational purposes.
Okay.
To disseminate what PTSD really is, because in 2017, I had no idea that first responders were susceptible. And I felt terribly ignorant and realized quickly that I wasn't the only one. I have 2 Marine children who were in the Marine Corps back then, and assumed that it was just our armed forces that were susceptible.
Right.
So when my husband came to me and said he had PTSD, I was quite taken aback by it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then after he died by suicide, I realized this is not something we can just ignore. I can't be the only person, civilian, that doesn't understand this.
Right, exactly.
So we set up the nonprofit in order to bring experts in to teach about PTSD.
Awesome.
And that's where my journey started.
And here we are 5 years later.
It'll be 5 years in September. And we have done an amazing job, I think, for such a small entity. Our purpose, again, was to educate, but in doing the education, people started reaching out to us.
Right.
Oh, that's
And in that moment, I realized, well, there's really no safe place for first responders to go. They don't have that comfort level to just reach out to their administration.
Right.
And so people were reaching out to me
Yeah.
because they knew my husband.
Right.
And with that, we started using our funds for inpatient care, outpatient treatment, family education, plane fare to get to inpatient facilities, deductibles, whatever we needed to do to get rid of that barrier that would hold them back.
Yeah.
Paying a car payment, paying to have the grass mowed, whatever we needed to do to make sure that that family was taken care of while their first responder was receiving treatment.
Wow.
So do you have a facility, or do you recommend?
I have plenty of facilities.
Oh, okay. So more of a referral then into
Right.
a facility, so you don't have like an office per se.
No, my office is wherever I'm sitting, whether it's in my car
Well, welcome to your office.
or your house now. It is wherever I go.
Okay. Very cool.
Beautiful. Is there, I know when we talked and when you were in Troy in March, you shared something that I just find delightful, and I've shared with every first responder I worked with, that your organization, the Chip Terry Fund, facilitates yoga for local departments. Could you talk about that a little bit? I love this idea.
So, yoga is one of those methods to help reduce cortisol. And cortisol is that stress hormone that amps us up and makes first responders do what they do. It turns that fight or flight on, along with adrenaline and norepinephrine. But there's no way, no way to reduce cortisol in your body.
Right.
So those 12 beers you drink every night isn't doing any good?
Not doing it.
Oh, okay.
So from what I understand, you have to cry it out, sweat it out, or pee it out.
Oh, wow.
And yoga has been shown to help reduce cortisol levels.
Really?
So when I first started this, I offered a grant to the City of Covington Fire Department to start a first responder yoga program.
How was that received?
Horribly at first. In fact, I had
They were probably like, what the?
They think I'm nuts. They did.
Okay.
And I had a phone call from one and said, I really think you've gone off the deep end with this PTSD stuff, Joe.
Okay.
I think you're just a grieving widow and this is never going to work. And slowly, the administration was great. They offer it 2 classes a day while they're on shift.
Wow.
A 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. And the administration makes sure that people are shifted around the city so that every member has the opportunity to attend.
Wow.
And it's
Yeah, that's
every
awesome.
week.
Okay.
COVID shut me down. They turned it off.
Shocker.
And the first thing the union body asked for when we opened back up again was to resume the yoga program. And still being done today. So 2 years
How
later.
well attended is it? Or do you know?
It just varies. Certain shifts are more engaged. It could be anywhere from 7 to 15 individuals in a class.
That's pretty big. How big is the department?
120.
Okay. I mean, still, that's pretty good. If you're up to 15, I mean, that's pretty good involvement.
It's very good, and they love it. And I'm proud to say we offered them as our first grant. And since then, when I go and teach, I offer it as a grant to departments as well. And I taught in Wisconsin last year and just provided them with a grant to start it up at their South Shore Fire Department.
Awesome.
A couple of smaller departments in Kentucky are doing it.
Very cool.
So it's one way to just try to clear the mind and do it while they're on shift. And those are the types of things we need to be doing for our individuals.
Absolutely right. Yeah. And that would include for law enforcement also?
I did it. I offered a grant to the City of Covington's police department.
Oh, okay.
And
How'd that go?
well, not great.
From the cop
Yet.
aspect, I can say,
Yet.
we're
Well,
not
it's
we're not doing it as a uniform.
It's different logistics.
Right.
You know, a fire department can do it while they're on shift. And if they have to make a run, they've got other people to cover. A police officer on shift isn't somewhere they can go do yoga.
Right.
So there are barriers there to my law enforcement people.
Well, would it be, and I'm just spitballing ideas, would it be available? Because like at the agency I was with, they reimbursed us for our gym. You know, they either gave us pool passes or we'll reimburse you for your, to keep you in shape. So I go to Planet Fitness, so they paid my yearly or my monthly, whatever, for that. Would it be something that would be if you have a yoga studio or whomever you're hiring, do they have their own? Is that what it's called, a yoga studio? I know nothing about yoga.
Yes.
Yeah, I practiced it briefly when I was doing CrossFit, but I'm like, this makes me fart a lot. But anyway, sorry, that's the MTC thing. But would the grant? See, then that falls in the grant funding as well. But anyway, I guess an option. Would it be an option where they could go to a studio, the cops off duty? Or have you crossed that bridge?
We haven't crossed that bridge. No one's asked me that yet.
There you go.
Might be
Right
something
here.
I need to look into.
MTC Studios, first question.
Yes.
Very, very good. You also you talked about going to Wisconsin. I know I saw you in Troy. You're doing teaching. So when you go to a Troy fire department, just as an example. How do you think about doing that? What's your kind of like your purpose, your mission when you stand in front of a group of fire people?
Well, so, as a kid, I was terrified of public speaking and never, ever envisioned myself in this role. But the content and the message to me is just so heartfelt that I go into a department realizing that there will be people who will never understand this subject matter, either because they don't want to admit it.
Good for you.
Or that they just are hiding behind their own fears.
Yes.
And I go into it thinking, if I can help just one individual so that another family isn't destroyed like mine, then it's worth it.
Yes.
And so I truly find it as, it's not just a job for me. It is a passion and a ministry.
Very good word.
In my mind.
Yeah. Yeah, very well put. Very well put.
So
you made an incredibly good presentation. As I was telling Mark, you did as good a job as any graduate level professor in clinical work could present on PTSD.
That's impressive.
And you did it in such a thoroughly comprehensive way that everything was touched. Family, parenting, your own self-care, career, future, the whole thing is a part of this work. And as I work with first responders, listening to your presentation, watching you do the video stuff on the screen, watching people in the audience respond to you was really cool. I don't know this, but it looked to me like there were a number of fire people there with spouses. And when you were talking about being a spouse, they were all crying, every one of them. They were all connecting. And when I hear you talk about your head when you walk into a training, it's like you go in there to make a connection with individual people. The department, the group, fine. But you're there to touch people on an individual basis. And that's what I saw you doing in that presentation. You were touching a lot of people on an individual basis. They felt it from you.
that is the biggest compliment you could have paid me. Because
like golf applause.
it is a burden. It is 5 years now that I'm carrying this story.
Right.
And it prevents me from really moving forward because every class I teach just takes me right back to the mistakes I made as a spouse, to that guilt that, you still carry.
Right.
Even though I do my own therapy.
Right.
The sadness that you realize someone you love
Yes.
suffered that intently.
Yes.
And so at some point I always thought, I'm going to be done with this. I've taught my class. I've done my job, but it just keeps coming back.
Exactly.
So as long as there's someone that wants to hear, and as long as there's that type of feedback that we're making a difference, I'll continue to carry this story.
And come back into that material, into that part of yourself. That's not like a good time.
No. It's a heavy time.
It's a heavy time, and yet you put yourself in a position over and over again to touch that part of you.
And that's the ministry of it all.
That's the ministry. That's the service.
Exactly.
Yeah. That we take away our will and respond to something bigger than ourselves when we walk into work each day. Who I'm going to touch, how it's going to happen. I got some part in that.
Yes.
But it's not the whole game.
Right.
There's other things going on in the room that are magical and beautiful and are to be respected. So we go back into places in our own lives that we don't want to go, knowing that on the other side of that, we're fuller and have more to give people in our lives in service.
And I think that part, the piece that they know is just so hard to give, is what generates that response.
Yes.
I am not a clinician. I am not a Dr. David. I am a widow and a spouse that has lived through this.
Right.
And I think that connects on that human level.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a first-person thing rather than a third-person thing.
Yes.
If you don't mind, you met your husband when he was already a firefighter?
Nope. We met in college. He was a musician student.
A musician.
Yes. He had a beautiful voice. He was studying classical music.
Wow.
And he was accepted to the fire department. He got on Covington Fire Department about 8 months before we got married.
So when you met him and you started becoming a couple, did you know that's where this guy was going to go career-wise, was to be a firefighter?
He was already a paramedic.
He was already a paramedic.
When he was hired on as a firefighter. I knew that was his ultimate goal, but he still wanted his degree. And music was his passion. So yes, we met when we were very young and dated, and he became a medic and then a firefighter. And
so I'm just fascinated with this. Like, he comes to you and says, I'm going to be a fireman, something up that street. And how do you respond? Like, does it scare you?
No.
Never.
Never. You know, he was always that man that wanted to help people. He was born to serve, like most of our first responders. And that's what attracted me to him. He was a man that was selfless. And when we dated, I saw that. I knew that this guy was never going to be a millionaire,
right?
But he was always going to take care of me and always going to take care of my children. And you don't find men like that everywhere.
That's right. A man who knows how to love well and knows that it's kind of like the first priority when you get up in the morning is to love well.
We were always his first priority.
Yes, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Okay, he's a paramedic. He's starting to go on runs fairly often. Does he tell you about what he goes through as a paramedic?
He did. I mean, it was conversation you have, you know. He had a horrible run, and we'd talk about it. Wow. He didn't show a lot of emotion about it. There were several events. I remember early before we got married, he had 2 SIDS deaths and a fatal heart attack all in one day.
That's heavy.
And I remember him becoming very emotional that evening about those 3. And then he just filed it away.
So what did you do in that moment when he's sharing with you? What's that doing to you, the listener, the wife?
I mean, I just listened.
You just listened.
I just listened. You know, obviously, I don't know what it's like to live like that.
Yeah.
Then, of course, there were the really gruesome runs, and he shared those at times. And towards, you know, the runs that Chip referred to as his demons were the runs that were early in his career. So I think one of the fallacies is that, you know, PTSD is just that one horrific run. Well, it's not. It is that accumulation of all of these traumatic events. And he would refer to them as his demons.
Yeah.
And the kids knew. Even our kids knew about the demon runs.
Wow.
You know, and he talks about them in his video when he retires. You know, and we knew those runs. But I don't think I ever grasped that these runs were changing him.
Oh, yes. Keep going there.
That's, yeah. It's like perfect. Like, it's more subtle.
It's very subtle.
And so there's like no moment in time where it's like, he's different now.
There was never. And so when I teach, I talk about that to the spouses. It's like, and to the first responders. You know, this is a man that was funny and loved life, and he could sing, and we would go out, and he was entertaining and passionate about life. And he retired in 2012, which is where his retirement speech comes from, where he talks about his demons. But I didn't start to see this negativity really evolving until 2015, 2016.
Wow.
And so I distinctly remember having conversations with my oldest child saying, he's turning into a jackass, And that was his favorite word when someone cut him off in traffic or angered him. He'd say, jackass.
Yeah.
And so, unfortunately, I applied that to him. And I can remember with my daughter saying, I will never leave him, but if he walked out the door tomorrow, I wouldn't stop him. And so I'm this woman in this relationship for 30 years with my best friend.
Yes.
Who is slowly turning into an angry, grumpy old man. Mm-hmm. He's disconnecting from me. He's disconnecting from the children. He's not the same guy I married.
Right.
And then as a spouse, you start to think, well, is this how a marriage turns to a divorce? Mm-hmm. Is this where we're headed?
Oh, wow.
And that's the conversation. I would have never left him, but not sure I would have tried to keep him if he had walked out on me.
Right. You said something very powerful there that I hear from spouses. They kind of think like, I should have seen this. Why couldn't I see this developing? What's wrong with me that I couldn't see that my husband, my wife, was devolving right in front of my eye, going into someplace miserable and suffering? Why couldn't I see that? And I think your point is so powerful that it's not dramatic. Mm-hmm. It's not a moment in time where you were all of a sudden here and all of a sudden you're across the room. No, it's more subtle. It's more gradual. And as Mark is one of the points you're making, Mark has made throughout our episodes is trauma for a first responder is more about the accumulation of events, the accumulation of reactions to those events, the habits that get formed out of those responses. That ends up being, and I guess, I've heard myself telling children of first responders and spouses, dude, you're not going to notice this stuff all the time. The person going through it isn't necessarily noticing anything.
No.
So your experience of being a partner, loving this person, but you couldn't see it, doesn't reflect on you. It's just it's how the process happens. It's subtle. Like in a lot of sense, I have some family members who have Parkinson's. Looking back, they can see, that's when it started. But when you're going through the first parts of Parkinson's, it's like you drop something.
Right.
It's just not something you pay much attention to. That's what I'm thinking happened here.
I would say that that's true, but you also have two people in a relationship.
Good.
Or more.
Yeah.
And so I'm carrying my own issues.
Yes.
So when he decides he's sleeping on the couch and our intimacy disintegrates, you internalize that.
Yes.
You don't say there's something wrong with him. You say, what is wrong with me?
Yes.
And then you start to think, well, I'm not pretty enough, or I'm not sexy enough, or he's just tired of me. And so then you feel rejected. Mm-hmm. And when I'm rejected, well, what do you naturally do with rejection? You get angry.
Yep.
And so then I pull away.
Yep.
And we don't communicate well. And so in reality, for at least a year, maybe 2, I'm dealing with my own self-worth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And thinking, what's wrong with me?
Yes.
And I can't turn around and look at him and say, it's not me, it's him. He has PTSD, because I have no idea that it exists.
Right. Much less that it's there inside your husband.
Exactly. Now, I will tell you this. You said that about being the individual being self-aware. Chip knew what he had toward the end. And if you hear the story, in 2017, Chip attempted suicide. And after that attempt, he stopped himself. He was going to hang himself on a train trestle not far from our home. And he had the wherewithal, that, second of clarity to think, this isn't a good idea. Mm-hmm. And he took himself to the University of Cincinnati's emergency room. Told them he was suicidal. Got tired of waiting, because it's a level 1 trauma center.
Mm-hmm.
on the 4th of July week.
Oh, goodness.
And
yeah, you're way down the list.
exactly. So he got up to leave, and they restrained him and put him in a straitjacket and sent him to UC Psych. Out of the ER. I guess they didn't want to deal with him because they had too much other stuff on their plate.
Yeah.
So while he was there, that's where he called me and told me what had happened the next morning. And we met with an inpatient psychiatrist, and that's where Chip said, I believe I have PTSD.
And you heard that from him for the first time.
Mm-hmm. And I was shocked. I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
And the psychiatrist told us, you have a guardian angel. Men your age are rarely capable of stopping themselves when they get this far.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to take care of you. And that's all I needed to hear, you know. A guardian angel was going to be right there, and they're going to take care of him. And unfortunately, the tragedy here is that they put him in an IOP for substance use disorder.
Yes.
And no one assessed him for trauma. And that wasn't
I'm
just...
sorry, what is an IOP?
An IOP is an intense outpatient program.
Okay.
So he would go from... He'd get up at 5:30 in the morning, go to work, cross town in Cincinnati traffic to the other side of Cincinnati, and attend from 6 to 9 p.m. therapy sessions.
Okay.
Monday through Thursday for 12 weeks.
Oh,
And
okay.
in the family sessions, I heard him on more than one occasion telling people, I have PTSD. I believe I have PTSD.
Okay, so he was self-diagnosing, but had the psychiatrist never diagnosed it?
No one. I
No
looked
one.
at his medical records. It wasn't just the psychiatrist. There were multiple clinicians within that IOP that he spoke to.
Wow.
But the sad thing is I saw him change. You know, so from July 4th until his death on September 15th,
Oh, goodness.
I saw a different man.
Mm.
He had quit drinking cold turkey. He was taking his antidepressants, but he was engaged in life. We took several weekend vacations, just the two of us. He was more intimate. We were talking. He was funny. He was engaged with the kids.
The old Chip.
That was the man I married.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I guess, as they say, he was just planning his suicide.
He had made
He had
his
become
decision.
at peace with it.
Yeah. He had liberated.
Or, I think I'm the only one sitting here at this table that's went through this. A lot of times what you do when you become, what is suicide idealization, you know, when things are really good, when things are cool, and life seems to be coming around, that little demon gets right in the back of your head. And it seems to me like for my story, when things are well is when you start thinking about it.
Well,
I know that sounds outrageous, but I can just tell you from my experience.
yeah, well, there'll be a conversation when I finally get to see him again about what
Yes.
were you thinking?
And there's other first responders that have shared that, you know, when you're suffering.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine the depth
Yes.
of suffering that someone goes through.
Exactly.
I can't fathom it. And it breaks my heart to think that there are so many first responders, individuals in general, but my passion obviously is first responders
Yeah.
who are living with that pain. It's not right. We shouldn't be there. We, as a department, as a city, as a state, as a government,
Right.
should be doing more for mental health in America, and we should be helping our first responders manage this from the beginning of their career.
Absolutely. And Dr. David's made that point, so go ahead, sir.
Yeah, we've been very strong advocates for having a department offer some mental health services to people when they start their career. Assigning somebody, this is your therapist. If things go off, we'd like, and maybe even, look, every 6 months, every 4 months, whatever, we're going to pay for you just to go in and spend some time with this person. We want there to be a relationship established so down the road, when things get really hard, you've got somebody already that you know that we can call up on the phone for you, get you an appointment pretty quickly, and we can start services for you. That having somebody at the beginning, not waiting until something happens, but understanding from the beginning this is going to happen.
Exactly.
And therefore, we're going to provide you with the service so it's ready for you when you need it.
And I think we need to be reacting to events as they occur. That acute trauma that slowly evolves into cumulative trauma, we need to address on the spot.
Yes.
So we had a pediatric drowning in northern Kentucky back in June. And I said, I'm not waiting. I knew one of the medics that was involved, and I said, look, this is what I want to do. I will pay for you to process this event right now. And anyone else that you know that was involved, I'll do the same. And so we did it. And I had 3 individuals with different therapists, and they went and they did the EMDR light, whatever you do for the acute version.
Right.
And we processed it for all 3 of them. And the goal here is that we make this the norm, that it becomes
should be.
embedded in every department that says, okay, you had this critical incident, and we're going to get you to therapy. And it took 3 visits for one visit for another, and maybe 4 for the 3rd individual.
Yeah.
It's a whole lot less expensive if we're talking
man.
about finances.
Right.
And we're salvaging this person.
Exactly. I know that Mental Health Board here locally has crisis response teams that go out the next day, but nobody does therapy. It's more like setting things up, referring people, having resources provided, done by the former cops, first responders, and their spouses and stuff. Very valuable. But to have a therapist right there that walks right in, basically like a paramedic for the paramedics.
Exactly. We need them embedded in every department.
Yeah.
Embed them.
Yeah, exactly.
Pay them what they're worth. Pay
Right.
these clinicians what they're worth. And don't delay.
Yes.
Get it done.
Get it done right now and prevent things from falling apart down the road. As you went through Chip's career with him and post the 5 years afterwards, did his parenting change when he became a jackass? Was his parenting different than it was before?
By then our kids were all older.
Okay.
Several were in the Marine Corps. One was married and had our first grandchild. I would say he was more laid back, actually, as an older parent. Our 2 youngest were still teenagers. Our 3 youngest were still teenagers. So I think it was in some ways easier. He wasn't on shift. We weren't juggling schedules and passing kids off. So, yes, I think he was more patient as an older parent. But he still had his jackass tendencies.
Yes, okay.
He still withdrew.
And that's another thing.
The biggest thing.
Yeah, Marc has talked a lot about the pattern that develops of isolating and how the isolation then becomes insulation and you feel safe in that space all by yourself. It's kind of like the only thing that you can tolerate. And you saw that in Chip as well.
Oh, I saw that firsthand. I mean, that was probably the most hurtful piece of the PTSD. He wasn't one to get angry or say angry things. He internalized his anger. I knew it was there, but pulling away from me. I mean, I was 18 when I met him. And so we grew up together.
Right.
We were literally best friends.
Yeah.
And to have your best friend all of a sudden miss your birthday intentionally, skip Mother's Day, miss Easter, all in the last year of our life, on top of pulling away from other social activities.
Right.
That's hurtful.
Absolutely.
And so it wasn't just me. He did it with his children as well.
Right.
And they became angry. And so now he's gone. And their memories are of those last years where they were angry at him for the way he treated me or the way he treated them. And they're living with that sense of guilt. That
Big time.
A little bit of survivor guilt. I think we would.
Yeah.
Would that clarify it a little bit? Or
No.
classify it?
That absolutely is a term that would apply here. Absolutely. And One of the other things that I think is really nice about Joe's website that strikes me, it resonates for me real strongly, is that there is such a lot of common ground between folks who are going through trauma and folks who are going through really big time grieving.
Yeah.
Grieving is, I think, gotten a tremendously bizarrely misunderstood mythology of its own. And we have this weird sense that, like, well, if that person's been dead X number of years, well, you should be over it.
Right.
The loss is permanent, but the grief is supposed to be temporary.
Yeah,
Makes
allegedly.
no sense to me whatsoever.
No.
So people put themselves on timelines and decide for themselves, there's something wrong with me because I'm still grieving. No, there's something right with you because you're still grieving.
Yeah, you're
because
human.
the person is still gone. And like Joe's saying, for herself and her children, and this resonates with other cases I've worked with, when the person goes away, you're left with all this emotion that has had no opportunity to be expressed. So it's hanging around inside you, doing damage to you, while you're preparing, I would like to think, to finally discharge that energy and put it someplace where it belongs, which is outside of you, not inside of you.
There's a lot of that, but there's also this, as I was going through my own grief, I didn't recognize that I had also been traumatized.
Yes.
So I'm feeling like I'm just grieving. All of this emotion is just grief, but they overlap.
Yes.
And it wasn't until a clinician from up here, Carla Urbanus, told me, you need EMDR. And I thought, no, I don't. I've only had one trauma. I'm not a first responder. This is just a grieving widow. And she convinced me over lunch one day to do it. And I did. And it was unbelievable the change it made. Now, I'm still grieving. I
Right.
still have a loss. I still will always miss him.
Right.
But the intense emotional and physiological response that I would get in discussing Chip's suicide
Right.
is no longer as damaging.
Very good word. Yeah. It's not hurting you.
Yes.
Yeah. And EMDR stops kind of like the self-harm
Yes.
part of the whole cycle.
Yes.
And refocuses on what's real, which
Right.
is your grieving.
Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. I want to go back a step. He's still a fireman. You still don't see Jackass show up again. So, like, he's still a fireman. He decides to retire. How did that decision happen?
He loved being on shift. His favorite position was the battalion chief of his shift, and he was connected with his shift and his men and women, and then he went into administration and became a training officer. So he was an assistant chief at the time of his retirement, which was a day job. And I don't think he ever, while he was good at it, I don't think he ever really loved it compared to the battalion chief position.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of changes going on within Covington. They had underfunded the pension, and so they were browning out apparatus. They changed their minimum manning staffing. They were talking about layoffs.
Oh,
and I
wow.
think he didn't want to be a part of that.
Wow.
And so that's when he left. And when you Google Chip Terry, you can find his retirement speech where he talks about the demons and what you do as a first responder. And he becomes very emotional and starts to tear up during his retirement speech. And that's in 2012.
Oh, wow.
And it's clear in hindsight
Right.
that he was dealing with a lot of PTSD stuff at that time,
Yeah.
which just changed over the next 5 years after he retired. So,
Were you supportive of his decision to retire?
absolutely, absolutely. I'm a physical therapist, and we owned a PT practice at the time, and he was helping me run the practice. And I thought, well, I'll have a house husband now. He can cook for me. He can shuttle the teens. He can, Well, that wasn't going to work. That was not Chip. Chip could never let me get up in the morning and go to work and put in a 10 or 12-hour day because he needed to be doing something too. He wasn't contributing. So that's when he started searching for another job and another career and was completely lost without the direction of the fire department.
Right. We've also talked about that factor as well, that it's, leaving the profession of law enforcement, first responders, is not the easiest thing in the world to do. It's a hard decision to make in the first place, and a lot of different factors can lead to that decision. But making the decision, and then the incredibly difficult question, what am I supposed to do now?
Right.
Now that risk thing that I kind of got used to, really familiar with, and didn't feel all bad, is gone.
There's just no way to fill that void if you're not prepared for it.
Exactly. And we've talked a lot about how important it is to have a life, to have a full life, so that when you retire, you have things you want to do, things you're passionate about doing. And, I know for some of the folks I'm dealing with now, playing music is what they all would like to return to. They'd all like to pick up their instruments again and get into a band because that was exciting, and it was, it wasn't law enforcement, but it was kind of where you get that edge on, and you're going to go out there perform in front of a crowd. It's fulfilling in that kind of a way. And it's like, nurture all that stuff while you're in the field. Pay more attention maybe to that than you do your own work. Make sure that the part of you that's alive and well when you're not on duty is alive and well when you retire. And then you've got something to go into that fulfills you.
I think that's great advice. I think, unfortunately, in our situation, with 6 kids and a business, and I see so many families that are so busy that they don't have the time to nurture that piece. And
but that's always the first thing to sacrifice. But
exactly, your hobbies, your passions.
Yeah.
And you do that for the better good of everybody else in your family. So when I teach, that is one of the things that we try to emphasize with our first responders and the spouses, is that you need that release. Whatever it is, you need to find it and you need to nurture it.
Yeah.
And the spouse needs to understand that it's not them absolving themselves of home duties.
Right.
It's them taking care of their mind. And I think that's a huge message we need to be sending to the families of the first responders.
Support their pursuit of wellness. And what I've been telling a lot of my folks is find something that you can do with your spouse. Like working out, going to church, doing stuff as a couple, take a night out, just go spend the night of the weekend, have a nice dinner, hotel, that kind of thing. Do stuff that makes you feel good right now as a couple. And you also nurture the intimacy between you and the people around you. And I know it gets really hard, as you're saying, Chip shared stories with you from the very beginning. I know a lot of law enforcement people who are just like, man, I'm not sharing that part of my life with my spouse at all, ever.
Yeah.
I mean, there's almost like, I don't want him or her to feel the same kind of stuff and think the same kind of stuff that's going through me. If I tell them this story and what I saw and what I went through, they're going to be burdened with it just as much as I am. Don't want to share that.
As a spouse, that I was never burdened with that. He didn't come home with, there were some very gory stories.
Right.
And it never, I don't know, it just never, I didn't see it. I didn't feel it. I didn't smell it. So it's not ingrained in my mind the way it is with a first responder.
Very good.
So to hold back and not let your spouse into your world is a mistake.
Love it. Love it. Love hearing that from you, Joe. Yeah.
I want to share something
Please
real
do.
quick before we go to it. I'm going to show you something. I ran across this morning because what I do is I sit around, smoke cigarettes, drink coffee, and scroll. So I ran across this, and I think that's very relative to what we just had. And I'll read it here in a minute. I want you to read it and process it, Joe, and then I'm going to show it to David. I think it's really impactful what we just talked about. uncomfortable silence
Yes,
on the air.
exactly.
Yeah. So what the
Exactly.
meme is, it says feeling the need to be busy all the time is a trauma response and fear-based distraction from what you'd be forced to acknowledge and feel if you slowed down. For me, nail on the head. And as you guys were talking about this just a few moments ago, I'm like, wow.
That
Bam.
was Chip. That was Chip, without a doubt.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I'll put that up on our social media for all to enjoy.
How are we doing with time?
We got 10 minutes. We're going to run these up to about an hour. Can we get an episode 2 out of you?
Sure.
You got time for another one?
Cool.
I have no plans today.
Perfect.
Awesome. I was a clinician for over 40 years. Had a private practice in two small towns, Tip City and Sydney. And mostly work with kids, a lot of little kids, a lot of adolescents, tons and tons of adolescents. Most of those children were people that lived in the area, but they were also foster kids that came from God knows where, ended up in foster homes in the area. And then along the lines, during the course of my career, I developed, at parents' demand, a relationship working with adults. And I spent the last 15 years of my career doing nothing but trauma work with mostly women who've been sexually violated, a group of first responders, including military, and then a variety of kids who had been through abuse and incest kinds of situations at home. And I saw women, for example, one woman who was an absolutely awesome woman to work with. She had been a teacher and retired with an incest memory from like age 11. She was like 60-something when she retired. She'd been carrying it around for 50-plus years. Kept her from being married, kept her from having children, kept her from having the life that she really wanted to have when she was 15, 16. When we took care of her work and relieved her of it, it was a dramatic kind of thing. Up till then, she had been considering suicide. It was like, my career's done. I've not had the life. I don't have the future that I wanted to have at this point in my life. She had been considering suicide very strongly. I didn't know that when we started working. Mm-hmm. Found out later. And she had a family member who was very disturbed by the fact this family member had been thinking about suicide. And so this family member called me. What am I supposed to do? Is there something I'm supposed to pick up on? Something I'm supposed to do to relieve this woman's suffering? I'm thinking, you're watching Chip be a jackass. Mm-hmm. And this is a very different set of behavior patterns than you're used to from him. So part of you is going through automatically, what's wrong with me? What am I not doing? Where's my deficits at? And you start to assess all that. When the suicide happened, was it like a bomb had been dropped on you?
No, absolutely. I mean, the night before was just a beautiful night. You know, It was a beautiful September evening. We sat on our patio in the front, and he was helping my college son pick out an apartment. And he gave him specific instructions. Pick out 5. We'll go look at them this weekend. And I'll help you pick the one you'll stay in. And it was just a beautiful night. I just assumed everything was great.
Right.
The next morning, we lived in this historic brownstone, and it was actually 2 units, a top and a bottom, that we had purchased. It was perfect space for 6 kids and mom and dad in the city. And we were selling 1 unit because we had purchased a house across the street that we were going to rehab.
Oh.
Chip and I were Chip and Joe before Chip and Joanna Gaines became
Right.
Chip and Joe.
Oh, yeah.
We didn't make any money out of it,
Right.
but we loved rehabbing. Mm-hmm. So this was our last hurrah, and we had already bought the property. So we were selling one of the condos. We were relocating to the upper unit, and the people were coming to sign the contract at our house that following morning. So I took our youngest daughter to school. I sent him a text. I said, look, remember, they're coming at 11. I don't know where you're at. Just make sure you get home. Mm-hmm. And I went back, was boxing things up, doing my stuff, and I heard the doorbell ring. And I could see through the glass on the door 3 men in dark clothing.
Oh, wow.
And I knew instantly.
Mm-mm-mm.
I thought he was still alive, but I knew it was Chip. And when I opened the door and saw our chief and one of Chip's friends and the chaplain and the police officer, it just...
Wow. I fell apart.
Yeah.
What else could you do?
It was shock. It was total shock. Like,
Right.
Where is he? What happened? And all along, his vehicle was in the parking lot behind our building with a suicide note on it. I had driven past it twice, didn't see it. I think that was God protecting me.
Right.
And, it was... unless you've lived with suicide, you can't even comprehend
Right,
what
that's
it's
right.
like.
That's right. And for me, that's a very powerful truth I've lived through with many families. That it's one of the most profoundly, subtly damaging things. I mean, when you hear that a family has had a member commit suicide, it sounds really dramatic, and it is. And the bomb being dropped is a bomb for the children, for the spouse, for the community around that individual. Then it's like, I spent, I don't know how many hours working with people who were kind of, how I thought of as like the bomb drops on the spouse and the family, like the immediate people. But then you've got ripples. And the ripples go through the community. They go through, like, I remember this kid in a local school here in the area. He committed suicide one morning. Nobody knew why he wasn't at school. And I had a kid in my office at that moment who was one of his best friends. And she got a call that he's been found in his bedroom, dead. And watching her response to this, wasn't her brother, her father. This was a guy she hung out with on occasion, considered him a friend. But what it did to her, the instantaneous host of questions that jumped up in her head, made her self-harm, self-punish instantly with the news. To sit there and watch that happen right in front of my eyes was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen in my life. And I know this kid's passing did the same thing to a lot of people in that school. Kids, teachers, administrators. And it's all about, where did I fall short?
Yeah.
What did I not do that I needed to do? What did I not see that I needed to see? And the self-punishment that goes on, and those ripples go through the community. It's such a powerful thing.
It is. And then you have your kids say, why wasn't I enough? Why didn't he love me enough to stay and fight this out?
Exactly. Yes.
And I can't answer that, you know. I believe that Chip's fear was that at some point his anger was going to take control of his behaviors, and he was fearful that he was going to harm maybe me or the kids or someone else.
Right.
And he says in his suicide note that he couldn't live with that, and that he felt like mental health issues are sometimes terminal. And the only way to survive or for the family to stay intact was for him to leave us. So when somebody says to me that suicide is selfish, I can't believe anybody would be that selfish, my reply is, in doing what he did, he felt like he was being selfless. He felt like he was protecting us. He, in that moment, could not bear the thought of harming someone. And
I think there's a sentence that goes along with that one. It's a beautiful thing to share. My family's better off without me.
they think it.
She's better off without me. He's better off without me. My kids are better off without me. The self-loathing has generated and been nurtured to such an extent that...
And no one should live with those thoughts.
Damn straight.
No one.
Ever.
Ever.
Yeah, okay. We're going to break here to separate the two episodes.
Okay.
So for those of you who are listening, I'm going to say real briefly, if you're being triggered, I'd like you to go back to the idea of grounding, which you would hear in episode 9 from Jerry Kanapke, which we talked about again, Marc talked about last in episode 10. Grounding is a procedure you can do right now as you listen to Joe and Marc and I talk, and bring yourself back to us. We're going to break now for a little bit of time. Come back next episode. Bring yourself down right now. You've got grounding. You've got safe place. You call that person on the phone that you know will listen to you. Find a way to make yourself feel better right now. May your days and nights find you strong and safe. May you take your place as your family's face. As you do the shit that we won't do, as you embrace the risk you must go through, may you grow in strength and heal and find your heart, your soul, and your mind. You look at your life and grin. You have a home, the shield within.